I would like to look at this in the following way, that the confusion that arises in many people's minds are that the laws of nature are themselves causes, but they're not. No billiard ball has ever been set in motion by Newton's laws of motion. People wielding billiard cues set billiard balls in motion. The laws of motion, Newton's laws of motion, will describe the way in which a billiard ball moves, of course, once it has been set in motion. But the laws are not causes in that sense. And they will describe its trajectory on the billiard table, provided, of course, nobody sticks their hand in and lifts the ball off the table. That's the first thing I want to say. The laws are descriptions, our descriptions of what we observe to happen, the patterns we observe, and on the basis of which we can make predictions. But the difficulty is that we use the word law in two senses, in a scientific sense and in a legal sense. Let me illustrate this with a very helpful remark that C.S. Lewis made in this very context. That if I put £100 plus £100 in my drawer at my bedside tonight, 100 plus 100 is 200. That's a law of arithmetic. Now, if in the morning I discover £50, I do not say that the laws of arithmetic have been broken. I say that the laws of England have been broken. But how do I know that the laws of England have been broken? Because I know the law of arithmetic. In other words, it's my knowledge of the regularity of the law, if you like, that enables me to tell that someone has put their hand into the drawer. Another event has transpired, and it's my knowledge of that law that enables me to say that something outside that system, if you like, has occurred. Now let's extrapolate this up onto a much higher level. As a Christian, I believe there is a God who's designed this universe and upholds it. And he has built into it those regularities which we have encoded in our scientific laws. They're the regularities. They are the way in which the universe normally works. But God the Creator is not a prisoner of those laws. He can feed, if he so wishes, a new event into the system. And of course, as C.S. Lewis points out, the laws immediately take over. If you turn water into wine, then if you drink too much of it, it will intoxicate you, according to the normal law of nature. But the laws of nature cannot forbid God feeding a new event into nature. After all, the laws of nature cannot prevent God creating the whole thing in the first place with the regularities that science has observed. So it seems to me to be a very wrong kind of deduction to say that science prevents somehow miracles. Now, of course, scientific observation can make miracles very improbable. We observe that dead people don't normally rise. That is, of course, the case. But you see, if you're going to recognize a miracle, and after all, a miracle is by definition something very much out of the ordinary, you've got to know what the corresponding regularities are. Otherwise, you couldn't tell whether the thing was a miracle or not. You see, David Hume and many others thought, and it's still very popular, the idea that the people that wrote the New Testament, for instance, wherein the miracles of Jesus are recorded, were of course pre-scientific. They hadn't a notion about the laws of nature, and therefore they found it very easy to believe a miracle. That's nonsense, actually. For instance, Joseph, when he discovered that his bride-to-be was pregnant, didn't say, oh, a marvellous miracle. Of course, yes. No, he wanted to divorce her. Why? Because he knew as well as any modern where babies came from. He wasn't an idiot. He knew the normal law of nature. And so it took an enormous amount of persuading, actually directly by God himself, before Joseph understood that here's something very special indeed extraordinarily special. This was God feeding himself into nature, not simply a new event. But the point is very clear. It was made again by a blind man whom Jesus healed. He said, look, he said to the people that were questioning him, he said, from the very beginning of the world, it's never been heard that a man that is born blind gets his sight back. He knew the norm, and so he recognized that what Jesus did was a miracle. Of course, they are right who warn us that we shouldn't accept all miracle stories. Some of them are bizarre and absurd in the extreme, and that's why I'm deliberately confining myself in this little discussion to the miracles claimed on Jesus' behalf in the New Testament. We've got to take each one on its merits, and therefore we've got to ask, with David Hume, what is the evidence on which this is based? And because some of these things are so staggering, in the particular the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we'd have to have enormous evidence. But I would want to claim that we do. And one of the strongest bits of evidence is the rise of the Christian church and what lies behind it. But that's a topic for another time.